So good morning everybody, and welcome to part 2 or build number 2 of the Susannah's Come Build With Me. So again, like I said, my apologies if these videos are a bit kind of all over the place. My intention was to originally try and put all these videos into one video, and as it turned out, there was just way too much footage and it took way too long to actually put it all into one video, because otherwise the video would have ended up being about 3 hours long or something. So in this build, we're now going to look at using foam board. And foam board is not unlike card, is you can't use the sort of fold technique, the score and fold technique, because it just doesn't lend itself to that. And if I just show you, this is just like a little scrap piece of foam board, but if you just try and bend it, it kind of, it doesn't really kind of do anything. You can't sort of do anything with it, and it just gets damaged quite easily if you're not careful. So when it's straight, it's very strong, and but when you try and sort of score it and cut it, it doesn't really like work in the same way as card. So when you're using foam board, you're essentially cutting out, you're just basically cutting out pieces and then after gluing them together, which is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be using the glue stick again today. So essentially what we'll be doing today is literally cutting up the pieces and then basically sticking them together. And I'm not going to be using the templates that I'd made at the back, because I'm actually going to make a slight adjustment to the building. However, this is the building that I originally made via those templates. But when I originally did the templates, I was sort of experimenting with the apertures and they were slightly off, and so I readjusted it on the second one. And the second one isn't still quite right, but basically this is. But what I'm going to do is actually make it wider still, and this is also to incorporate like the first building, if you've seen the first one, where you're going to be able to put a little forklift down the side and sort of have a little run through and maybe an office and stuff like that. So I'm just going to make this building slightly wider than this one is. Now this one still isn't finished, and this one's made out of card, and you can just see how sturdy it is. So I need to finish it. The reason why I haven't really been finished, well, this one hasn't been finished, is because I actually, like I just said, I've been using it as a template. So rather than sticking all the lighting and the wiring in and everything like that, and actually sort of semi-permanently sticking it to the layout, I've just kind of left it unfinished for the moment. And then afterwards, once I've sort of got the rest of the buildings built, then this one can become a more permanent fixture and I can finish this one off. So again, we're going to be using and starting with a big piece of card, and we're going to probably be starting, probably designing it on here, I guess, and then we work our way around. So I'm just going to spin you down, and here we go. Now, as you can see, no, here we go, a bit more like that way. I've got this spare piece of foam board. Now I'm going to be using this because, unlike the card technique, we're just basically cutting pieces out of this to make a jigsaw puzzle and get them to all fit. So we don't have to worry so much about whether or not, you know, how we're going to actually mark it out on the foam board and how it actually is going to come together to form the overall picture. Here, this is about just taking out, using the pieces that I've got here to sort of to make the big building. So we're just going to basically cut out sections and mark each section. So I don't need this big sheet for the moment, which makes life a lot easier because it means I can work on this little sheet. And this is just, like I said, an offcut of a previous sheet like that. And what I'm going to be doing for this is, again, with foam board, I don't necessarily need the tabs. So I don't need to create tabs on this either. So this is literally, you're just literally just building the two sides and the two ends, and if you want to strengthen it, and the roof, and then if you want to strengthen it, you can. But pretty much it's going to be like that. So what we've got here was, I'm just going to take some measurements here. So that's the original building there. Just so I've got my orientation here. So it was 15.5. So I'm going to want approximately 18 centimetres. So bear with me, I'm just going to double check that. So I've just been checking my measurements and it should work out to how I want it. So we're at 18 centimetres, which is going to be the width of the building. Now I should be able to get 2 pieces out of this. And by doing that, and what I'm going to do is just cut a line from there to there, and then what that ensures is that the 2 ends are exactly the same in width. Let's just trim that off because that slipped. That's it. Right. So you can see how easy it is just to trim it. But I just want to tidy up this because the it slipped slightly. That's why. Right. So anyway, let's just double check. Make sure that's 18. So for my purposes of my building, I want this slightly extended version. Now the height was slightly lower on this one, so it was 9 centimetres. Now to be honest with you, it's not the end of the world if it isn't quite 9 centimetres. Because in height, just purely because it doesn't actually make a difference to the footprint of the building, but that's what I'm working to. So the height's going to be 9 centimetres on this building. So that marks that out. I also want to mark out the middle of this building. So because it's 18, we now got a reference point from here. And from, oh yeah, let's get a reference point down at this end as well. Because that will help when I come to do the other side. Right, so that's, and then what we need then is we need 10 centimetres, because although the building is 9 centimetres, the walls are 9 centimetres. Like I said yesterday, we're creating the apex, and the apex on this is going to be shallow. So it's only 1 centimetre in difference. So if I do that, and that, you can now sort of see one end of the building there. And then we do the same for the other bit. So we'll mark out another 10 centimetres. And 9 centimetres on the edges. And that gives us the two ends. So we now got this sort of safety bit in the middle that we're just going to get. So if I just mark that off, you can now see that we've got the two apexes, the two ends, and the apex is fitted. And now we're just going to basically trim it off with the knife. And you can sort of see how easy it is to work with foam board because it cuts through very easily. So that's one end done. Now we've got to do the same to the other end. Now with foam board, I'd usually recommend that you use foam board for the larger buildings because you can make larger buildings out of foam board. I mean, you can make it out of card, but what I've found with card is when I've made larger buildings out of card is that you sometimes have to splice it because you haven't got the rigidity where this has got the rigidity, you see. So you have to splice it and then put more, because you can't quite get the length out of one card because it just becomes too flimsy. Whereas with this, you can actually just get a better size length of building. You can make longer buildings out of foam board as opposed to card. But like you can see, my other one, I did splice it together to give it that rigidity, which is why it's so strong. But that's about 3 layers. Whereas when you think about it, you see the thickness of that. That's about 2 layers of card, or maybe even 3. So we've now got the overall width of my building now. So I can carry on with this to put the apertures in and stuff like that. So that's probably what I'm going to be doing next. So what I've just done is, in between the clips, is I've just taken this down back to the layout where I'm going to put the building, because this is actually slightly wider. So let me just show you the original building that I'm sort of working with, but you can see now that this is actually slightly wider. So it's a good idea that since I've made these changes, that just to keep just popping back to where you're going to place it, just to check to make sure that you've got your measurements right before you go too far, because the last thing you want is to sort of put this all together and then you realise, you kind of go, oh, it doesn't fit. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So if I'm not sure, I just keep popping back just to check it, make sure it's all fits properly as it should. So the next stage of it is going to be to sort of mark out the apertures of it. And because I've made it slightly wider, the apertures for the 2 sheds are going to be actually slightly offset. So it's not going to be symmetrical right down the middle. And this is to make room for the additional aperture that I made, like on the first one, where I put the little shutter type thing for the forklift to be able to go in. But I'm not going to do it on this side, because what I'm going to do, I'm only going to do it on one side, which is the back side. And on the front, I'm just going to leave it plain, and then you're just going to put the door on the side of it. So you'll see it when it comes together. So for this piece at the moment, what I'm going to do is just put 2 apertures, and that'll be it on one end. And on the other end, I'm going to put the 2 apertures plus the shutter. And that will be the back end. So back to my building that I built previously. and then we can make some adjustments accordingly. So on here, we've got 3 centimeters. There. I always like to put a couple of marks just because it helps with the alignment to keep the line straight all the way from top to bottom, because what you don't want is 3 centimeters down at this end, and then at the top end it starts creeping to 3.2 or 3.3 or whatever because it's slightly wonky. So as you can see now, I've now marked out where I'm going to make the cuts. So you can see like the 2 apertures here, one there, one there. The height is 7 centimeters, which is my standard height that I use for my, and this allows me a 1 centimeter drop if I want to put the shutters in, like I've done on this building here, for example. So from there to there, and then after you allow a drop for the shutter inside, and then I can still get my shunter in there, because my shunter is basically my tallest locomotive. So that's the guide to use, is use your tallest locomotive that you have that you want to go into the shed, but just generally use your tallest locomotive that you've got, especially if you've got ones with pantographs. So for example, if you are making a Freightliner depot or something like that, then obviously they've used 86s and 90s, so they've got pantographs. So if you do plan on making one of those type of buildings, then you might want to kind of make sure that you test them to make sure you've got enough clearance for those. But I haven't got those, but I did make allowances for it. Plus the thing is, you want to make the scale right as well, because what you want to do is make sure it doesn't look like you've got a massive amount of clearance, but at the same time you just want to make it look like it looks right. You don't want this big cavernous gaping hole, so you want it to sort of look all like in its how it should do. So that's nearly that end done. And then we'll cut. And as you see, foam board is so easy to work with. But what I would say is, because of my experience with my carriage shed and that warped, what I would say to you is that just use it with caution. And I wouldn't really use Yoo-hoo glue either. I'd stick to PVA. I found that when I used the Yoo-hoo combination of Yoo-hoo, plasticard and foam board, it just didn't work. You ended up with this warps and bubbles and bulges everywhere. So it's actually better to use PVA rather than foam board. Rather than Yoo-hoo when you start sticking plasticard, if you go down that route. Now, as you can see, that one end is slightly wider. This one's slightly wider than that end. So I'm just going to test fit it on the layout. I would actually show it to you, but I've actually done quite a bit down at that end, so I want to show you that on a separate layout update. So I'm just going to quickly test that. I'll be right back. So what I'm now doing is I'm just marking out the aperture for the door, because I was actually going to put a shutter for the forklift, but it seems to me that it's not going to be wide enough to do it without compromising the integrity of this corner. So what I'm going to be doing instead is essentially I'm just going to put a door in here instead, and this will be the entrance to the office at this end anyway. It was mainly at the other end that I was going to do it, But what I will do is I'll put the entrance for the forklift down the side there. And then that should be where that needs to be. So it's just a bit of a shame. I should have put it a bit wider, but I'm just trying to, again, like I said yesterday, because I'm retrofitting this, I haven't got the proper space that I would have liked to be able to do a proper sort of build on it. If I was starting from scratch, it would have been different. But because I'm retrofitting it, I'm just got to try and work with the space that I've got. But like I said, if you are starting from scratch, then obviously this is when the planning comes in. But to be fair, you know, a lot of people do change their minds along the way. So even if you do plan for it, you know, sometimes you do end up changing your mind anyway. So I'm just going to do it like that. Slightly just cutting out the aperture for the door. And I've even offset the door. And the reason, again, is like I was saying yesterday about considerations for things. Sometimes, that's cut up. Oh, there you go. That seems, yeah, that's it. Right, so you've got the aperture of the door there. So even the door is offset, and the reason why the door is offset, and as you can see, you've got a space there for the door, is so I'm just even thinking about the safety warning markings, so I could put some safety warning markings down the side there and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I'm thinking with that. Now with this one here, the other end, again, it'll be the same. Now it doesn't make too much of a difference if you kind of do these, like yesterday I was saying that you'd have to reverse it, but because we're making it as two separate pieces, if you create the same one again and you get it wrong, you can just reverse it around, and then after it would be facing the right way around. So but what I'll do is, rather than just copy the outline from this one, I'll just do the measurements completely again. So I'll come back to you when I've got the two sides done. So as you can see, I've now got two equal pieces. So like I said, even if you get it wrong, you could just spin it around and then you've got the two equal pieces. So that forms the ends of the building, like so. And that's probably the hardest bit of it, is just making sure that you've got the to cut out all the apertures and make sure that they're all in the right place. Now the next thing I'm going to do for this, and like I said, this is totally customizable, so this is something I didn't really think about, but what I'm going to do is, just in case, what I'm going to do is going to make another template using this scrap piece of card, and this time I'm just going to trace along the outside of it. Now the reason for doing this is I'm considering sticking this in the middle of the building as a support. So if there's any, just to give it a bit, make sure it doesn't bow and stuff like that. And also I'm going to put a lighting rig in here, so I can use the height to support the lighting rig as well. So that's kind of one of the things I was just thinking. So I'm just gonna, so this is kind of like a build as I go along, really. I haven't really planned this or anything like that. So just so you guys are aware of it. Because sometimes you just can't, I'm just literally just doing it like this. And I think what I'm gonna do, like I said, I'm just gonna make the most out of this scrap piece of card because it works to do so. And I need my big ruler for this bit. Whether I use it or not, I'm not entirely certain, but I'm just going to I've just sort of, as I'm going along, I'm kind of test fitting it where I want to put it. But again, this piece of foam board is not going to be used anyway, so I might as well just have it as a spare, and then that way I've got the shape. But what I'll have to do is you take a slight mil or two in, so you can compensate for the side walls that you put in. So if you sort of take a look, see there's the line that I drew, but I cut inside the line to allow for the thickness of the bit that's going to go on the outside to butt up on it. I might need to trim it off some more, but this is something that I can do afterwards. Right, so that does that. And the other thing is with this is I'm not going to bother with the with so much the I'm not entirely certain how far I'm going to go with this in terms of whether I'm going to use this or not, but what I will do is I'm just going to try and keep it as relatively open as possible. So I'm just trimming it. I'm making the aperture a bit wider on this one, because this is going to be the inside support if I use it. Let's see. So there you go. So that's like a lot bigger. So that will go as an inside support should I need it. And it's actually slightly narrower. So that should allow for the foam board to fit in. In fact, it might need a bit more. Let's just check with that. That looks, it does look right though. Yeah, it does look right. Okay. I mean, we might have to trim it, but I think that looks about right. So, and hopefully that, and again, it will give some support to the roof. So that'll be the middle one. So all these pieces become a bit obsolete now. So just sort of clear the decks a little bit and move on to the next bit. So as you can see now, I've cut the two strips for the walls and I've also marked out the centre, and that will be the centre which supports the middle of the canopy, like so. And then once that's all glued in, that will give it a bit of rigidity and a bit of support, and that will keep it relatively open. So that's what I'm thinking of doing next, is now starting to glue it together before I do the roof, and then I can sort of test fit it and see how it goes. So what we'll do is we'll just do that, and then so it's going to be easier. So we've got our glue gun at the ready, just like yesterday. It's the same glue gun. And just like yesterday, it takes instantly. But what I have done, now this goes to show you, I've actually made a mistake. So we're going to correct this mistake right now. Well, actually, it doesn't make any difference, to be honest. Now, I tell you what the mistake was, that I should have actually glued it on the inside, but I didn't. I glued it on the outside. And what I mean by that is I should have glued it from this point here, but I didn't. But doing it this way, it doesn't make any difference, to be truthful, and it actually gives a bit better rigidity. So that's fine, it will work. The only problem is that I'll probably end up having to redo the inside one. But like I said, because it's foam board, it doesn't really make a difference. So I'm thinking now that this isn't gonna, so when I put, let me just put this end in, it's gonna be out. Okay. So what I'll do, so basically that one I've now kind of bodged, and that's no good to me now because I've now glued it on the outside. It's not the end of the world. I'll just have to create another piece, and I'll see if I've got another scrap piece, and I'll be back to you. Okay, right, so what I've now done is I've made another piece, so it doesn't make a difference. So let's carry on. And also I need to make sure that the apertures are on the right way round. Right, so that is on. And as you can see, the building's taking shape now. And basically what I've decided to do is, I've just decided, like I said yesterday, was I was thinking of maybe making it slightly longer so you can fit a 66 and a 73. So, but what I've decided to do is actually, I'm just going to scrap that. I'm just going to make it the same length as the other one, which is 14 inches. And then essentially it will be the same all the way through. And then the buildings can then be side by side. Okay, so I've now made a new piece. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to slice. I know it's a bit kind of chaotic around here, so let's try and clean this up a bit so you can't. I'm just going to take the top off, which in fact is probably easier for me to do with these scissors. And the reason why I'm just going to flatten the top up is, actually probably isn't. Is essentially when it comes to put the lighting bar in, there's a gap that you can use to sort of mount the lighting bar on. So it has to be slightly lower. So when you put the lighting bar on it, it's got somewhere to rest. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm doing that. So that's going to fit like so. So now, it's all a bit chaotic and a bit mad, but we're getting there. Right, so now I'm going to put a bead of glue along here as well. And then That should be lined up in the centre, like so. Oh, okay, that's why it doesn't sit properly. So now we can now start gluing the other side. Hopefully, she says, it will all come good. Now, where's the... Well, I don't know what it is with me and those glue sticks. They keep disappearing on me. Right, so the next job is to essentially line this up with that, and then that will be our building pretty much there, like so. So I think I'll line up the middle one first, because that's the sort of... As you can see, our building is coming along very nicely. Let's see if I can put a bead of glue here. It's always a bit tricky when you kind of get to these positions here. The other thing is you want to get them lined up straight so they're not wonky before the glue goes off, because you get a few seconds to play with it. Sorry. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, because once you start cladding this, and it looks like it's going to be straight. Now, one of the reasons why I did the middle first is A, to make sure it's straight and in the right place, and then it makes sure that the building isn't wonky then, because you can always adjust it from the ends, and also it makes it easier to do the ends afterwards rather than trying to do the ends first and then trying to squeeze the glue gun to do the middle. Right, okay. Now remember, this is all going to be clad in plastic card, so don't be too sort of worried about, but you can see that the basis of the building is there. So let's go and have a look at it on the layout and see. Well, I can't show you like I keep saying, because I've actually done some work around the back, so that'll be on a separate layout, but I'm going to just take it to the back and test it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the building pretty much here as it is, and the reason why is because I can't really go much further with it, because essentially I want to put a lighting bar across here, but I'm not going to put a lighting bar in it until I've done the inside. So what I need to do is I can't put the roof on, because obviously if I glue the roof on then I won't be able to take it off, and the lighting bar needs to sit in this notch which I've cut out. So if you just imagine this sort of scrap piece of foam board as a notch, as a lighting bar, it will just sort of sit in there across. And what that will do is A, give some support to the building structurally, and also it will give me some place to mount the lighting strip when I come to do it. but that will come afterwards. So I need to be able to keep the roof off, so I won't bother. But you get the idea in terms of what you'd have to do is basically just cut another strip of foam board and glue it on. And again, like I said to you before, it's totally customizable. And because it's totally customizable, you know, it's up to you how far you want to go with it. Whether you want to put lighting in it, whether you want to just have it without a roof and just have it as a display like that, so you can see the logos inside and see the detail. So you could actually leave it open like this if you wanted to, so you can see all the details, the toolboxes, the compressors and all that kind of stuff, jacks and all that kind of stuff, if you really wanted to. So that's entirely up to yourself how you want to go about it, whether you want to clad it in plasticard, whether you want to clad it in paper. But essentially, I'm just showing you this as a guide to actually get you in there, to show you that actually it's quite easy to work with foam board and it doesn't take much effort to do it. Like I said, again, it's just a little bit of mathematics to work out what size you want the building, how you want it, whether you want it, you know, how many doors and how many sort of loading bays you want, how many windows you want, and all that kind of stuff. So from that point of view, I'm going to leave the building there, but like I said, you get the idea of where I'm coming from. And so until the next time, it's goodbye from me, and thank you for watching Susannah's Can Build With Me. And hopefully, like I said, this will kind of get you into the ballpark and give you some confidence. I mean, like I said, that particular sheet there cost me $5.99 for that whole sheet, and I've only scratched the surface of it. So you can make lots of buildings. So if it's one of those things that you really get into, I mean, you can buy smaller pieces of foam board. You don't have to buy that big one, but to be honest with you, I'll probably eat into that anyway and probably make other things out of it. But right now, this is just to show you how you can use foam board to create a building. And like I said, it is pretty strong and sturdy as it is, and with not too much support. But what I would say to you is, if you do end up cladding it in plasticard, then please use PVA for foam board and not the Yoo-hoo. I mean, it's just my experience, but I found that the Yoo-hoo ended up eating into the foam board and started warping it. So with the card, Yoo-hoo, you can use Yoo-hoo for the card, but on the foam board, I think it has a bit more of a detrimental effect on it. As you saw in my other building, which really did get warped at one end because of using Yoo-hoo. I mean, I've managed to save the building, but I've learnt a lesson. And what I did with that building is, because I hadn't finished it, when I did the inside, I experimented with PVA instead of using Yoo-hoo, and it worked better. So if you do clad it in plasticard, then obviously preferably use PVA rather than the Yoo-hoo. So anyway, till the next time, bye from me. My name's Susannah, and I live with trains. Bye bye.